said, he had a wonderful long sermon about loving your enemy, and he said, loving your enemy, there are three things required of you to love your enemy. The first one is forgiveness, obviously, forgiveness. And forgiveness is something that the person who is wronged has to initiate that. You have to offer forgiveness, and you might have to offer it before the other person asks for forgiveness, if you're actually serious about loving your enemies. So forgiveness is number one. The second thing is looking for the image of God. Do you believe that every human being in the world was made in God's image? Okay. If we believe that, then we should look for the image of God in every person, including Vladimir Putin. He's a human being. Yeah. And so that gets to seeing your enemy as more than this evil thing that they are doing or that they did or that they, that we see too much of. It is about understanding that there is some good in the worst person and there is some evil in the best person. Right? Yeah. When we look for God's image in a person, we can see facets of that person that we are not going to see otherwise. If we see them as a human being made in God's image just like we are, then we might recognize that a lot of what they do maybe comes from fear or a sense of loss, maybe, or just plain ignorance or pride. Pride gets in the way of so many things. And the third thing is to seek understanding. And so he says, don't look for those opportunities to push that, push the dagger in a little bit farther. Don't look for opportunities to humiliate your enemy, catch them in a moment of weakness or something and just pour humiliation on them. Don't do that, because that's not going to lead to a good place. To answer hate with hate never leads to a good place. Spite with spite never leads to a good place. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said to love your enemies. So what you do is you look to understand them better. You look to find out maybe what they like, what they're interested in, what they're good at. And then somehow find a way to connect with that or to do something for them. Some enemy you have, and I know that we generally don't like to think about having enemies. When I pray the Psalms especially, and you get into these Psalms of Lament where it talks about the enemies and those who persecute us and all that, and I'm sometimes hard pressed to figure out who I'm talking about. And there are all different ways of thinking about that, and sometimes I even think that what I should be thinking about is maybe just the evil that is inside of me that prevents me from doing the good that I want to do. So it's complicated, but there are enemies in some way, shape, or form. We all have some enemy that we can focus on. And so we befriend the enemy when we are seeking to understand them. We look for ways to connect with that person. And if we don't know them, Putin, for example, you can just, find some aspect to think maybe in a more positive way about that person. Do you think there's anything else that might be needed?
When so much of this, do not judge, do not condemn, forgive, is that, if you take that literally, presuppose that there is no evil in the world?
No. No.
But evil, as an absolute, you don't forgive, you do condemn, you do hate.
You can hate evil, but should you hate a person?
I think some people are evil.
Some people are evil.
Yeah, or would you say that there are no evil people, they're just evil actions?
I would go out on a limb and say that there are no purely evil people in the world. There are some people who are very sick.
Yeah. And you do not condemn them? I mean, is that what Jesus is saying? Do not
Yes,
condemn
he is saying,
those that
do not condemn them. He's saying that's not our job to condemn.
Or you see people getting hurt and injured and killed, and the police go after them. And, they have to go after them and stop them.
Well, I don't think Jesus is
Take
saying
the
that there should
action.
be no consequences, that there should be no punishment. Is that what you
They
mean?
can't be loving them when they're going after them or when somebody's hurting somebody.
Well, maybe you could. I mean, I've never worked as a police officer or somebody who goes after other people, but I don't know how they deal with it, but maybe you can find ways to have compassion for even the people that you are going after, and that's what Jesus would suggest, I think.
There's another story about a woman whose son was murdered.
Uh-huh.
They caught the guy, he went to jail, and she was the first one in line to visit him day in and day out, and read scripture and talked with him, and he turned his life around.
So this is a woman who was a victim of an evil act.
Right.
And she chose, and this happens a lot, she chose to seek forgiveness, to do things that would help her forgive this person.
She was hurting for hating him.
The
She
hate
had
in
to
her-
turn her love to him so that she could recover from it and not keep that hate alive in her body.
Right, right.
That's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard.
I was going to ask if you could love your enemy from afar.
Yeah, okay. That's something that I'd rather do a lot of times too. You know, just not have anything to do with somebody who is just a problem for you, and just try to have loving thoughts and prayer, but not have to have a relationship with them. And yet I think that's what Jesus is urging us to do. And I know that's what King was saying in his sermon, is that really you are called to try to reconcile with your enemies. I mean, it may not ever happen, but that's how you are called to act as a Christian in the world, is to seek that reconciliation. Yeah, it's a hard thing, yeah. But, you're talking about people who do bad things, Anne, and need to have the consequences, need to be punished or put away, or however you want to say it. And Pat here is talking about examples of people who have gone to visit them in prison or something, because they want for themselves to experience the forgiveness,
I can understand that.
softening of their hearts. They do not want their hearts to be hardened by hate. So, that's what we practice. So these three things that he said we need to do. Forgiveness, we need to seek to find the image of God in the other person, and we need to seek understanding of that person, to actually know them better as more than just the bad thing that they did. Can you think of any examples? I mean, you gave us one, a woman who went to visit somebody in prison. As we're talking about this, are any real life examples, somebody you've heard about in the news, read about in the paper, or maybe know in real life, who has practiced loving an enemy? Larry?
Up in Georgetown, I think it was Georgetown, where there was, I don't know, it was a Mennonite school that a gunner, person with a gun came in and killed, and the people from that community reached out to the family of the person that killed their loved ones, and knowing that basically that they were good, that there might have been some bad things, but they very much reached out to and accepted the good in the shooter and his family.
Yeah, practicing that radical forgiveness, extravagant love. Yeah, Kit?
I remember when they had the murder of all those Amish children.
Yes.
Uh,
Nickel Mines?
Yeah, and the parents brought dinner to the person who had done that.
Or the family of that person. I remember that.
Family,
Yeah. They showed radical compassion for the family of that guy.
That would seem to me to be very, very difficult.
It would be a hard thing to do. Yeah. I want to give us some time to practice something over here. I think we've had some really good discussion, and there may be more questions in your mind, but I'd really like to give you an opportunity to if you turn over your page, and it says praying for enemies. And so this is going to be a little exercise that I'm asking each of you to do all by yourself. not, don't have to share with anybody, don't have to talk to anybody. You can, put your arm around your paper so nobody can see what you're writing. And just see if you can answer these questions. Sometimes enemies are easy to identify. Those who oppress with violent acts can be labeled with little trouble. But let's think about it a little bit more. What other actions would lead you to label someone as an enemy? And then who are the people in the news who you might call enemies? Who are the people who have hurt or angered you in the past? You don't have to call them an enemy, but think of who they are and go ahead and write these things down. Who are the people you find difficult to love? And then when you've written all these things down, and it takes some courage to do this, even though you're just doing it for yourself, it's just between you and God. And then if you have a moment, then to just pray silently or write a prayer down in the space below, asking God to help you to love these people that you have listed on the page. So I'm going to give us a little bit of time now to work on that.
Maybe,
Yeah.
enemy is such a strong word.
Yes, it is.
I mean, you know people that you don't like, but they're not.
Well, and if you work through this, Carol, you can do that. Maybe that's the area that's more comfortable to you. Just thinking about the people who have hurt you, people who've made you angry, people you find hard to love. And you can skip over the ones that ask you to the enemies. See, if you look down about halfway down the page, you can just focus on that if you'd rather.